Military expert from Ukraine, Oleksandr Kovalenko, reported that in the southern sector, including in the Zaporizhia region, the Ukrainian defense forces have intensified tactical counterattacks in certain sections of the front. He estimates that these actions are localized, but yielding significant results, as they are aimed at improving positions and disrupting the plans of Russian troops. Kovalenko emphasizes that the counterattack became possible when Russian units experienced problems with high-quality communications and coordination after the Starlink blockage. Under these circumstances, Ukrainian forces seized the opportunity to act quickly and precisely, recapturing key areas. One of the key factors was the significant depletion of the enemy's offensive capabilities in certain areas. Since the fall of 2025, the Russian 5th Combined Arms Army has suffered heavy losses and lost its former striking power. This reduces the ability of Russian troops to maintain momentum and sustain pressure on Ukrainian positions. Against this backdrop of weakening, the Ukrainian side gains more room to maneuver and conduct tactical-level actions without attempting to run forward at any cost, but rather with an eye on terrain and logistics advantages. Kovalenko lists areas where, in his assessment, Ukrainian units have made progress and improved the situation. The Ukrainian armed forces pushed Russian forces back from Novoalexandrivka, Verbove, and Vishneve, taking advantage of the enemy's weakened position due to the redeployment of resources to other objectives. According to the expert, in the area near the Haichur River, Russian units were pushed back to the left bank, strengthening the Ukrainian side's position along this line. At the Stepnohorsk bridgehead, the Ukrainian armed forces are holding the city and have driven Russian troops out of Primorsk, clearing the northern part of the town, and have also improved the situation in the Lukyanivka area. The expert notes that such counterattacks have a practical effect. They straighten the front line, remove dangerous salients, reclaim favorable positions, and expand the possibilities for further tactical action. The expert says that the second week of February 2026 proved to be one of the slowest advances for Russian occupation forces. According to open sources, during this period, Russian units were able to occupy only 33 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. This is the lowest weekly figure not only since the beginning of the year, but also for most of 2025. This dynamic appears particularly telling. Progress is slowing while the price per kilometer remains extremely high. But even more importantly, during the same week, Russian military casualties totaled 6,940. This level itself is close to the average for recent months, but given such modest territorial results, the proportion appears extremely severe for the Russian army. Converted to the captured area, this translates to approximately 210 men per square kilometer. In fact, to capture even small areas, Russian forces lost the equivalent of several companies for every kilometer advanced. In total, Russian troops occupied 98 square kilometers in the first 2 weeks of February. A significant portion of this area, approximately 21 square kilometers, occupies the so-called gray zone of the border, where control remains unstable. Total losses over the same period are estimated at 12,590 people. This averages out to 128 people per square kilometer, indicating a continuing trend. Territorial gains are declining, while the level of losses remains stably high. Observers attribute the deteriorating performance, among other things, to communication and management problems. In practice, this means a further weakening of Russia's offensive potential and an increased burden on the country's mobilization resources. Washington is registering increased military activity by Russia and China near Alaska. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan asserts that these are not random maneuvers, but rather strategic surveillance and a show of force. According to a senator representing Alaska, Russian and Chinese military aircraft and ships have entered the U.S. Arctic Air Defense Identification Zone dozens of times, indicating coordinated pressure on the country's northern borders, according to a Fox News report. The Air Defense Identification Zone is a buffer space in which aircraft are required to report their presence in advance. Russian and Chinese incursions into the territory that is the closest refuge for the United States are fueling the race for control of the American Arctic, the article says. Sullivan said the incursions recorded were primarily airborne, including joint patrols by Russian and Chinese aircraft, as well as actions by naval and research vessels. They were spying on us, the senator said, adding that the missions included monitoring submarine routes and studying undersea communications cables running through Alaska last month. Sullivan chaired a Senate Commerce Subcommittee hearing that secured $25 billion in Coast Guard funding, including $4.5 billion for infrastructure upgrades, such as a deepwater port in Nome, one of the closest U.S. cities to Russia, and additional Arctic icebreakers. The U.S. currently operates 2 icebreakers, one of which is malfunctioning, while Russia reportedly has 54. There is also talk of resuming operations at the military base on Adak Island in the Aleutian Archipelago. Adak played a key role during World War II and the Cold War, when it was used to monitor Soviet activity in the North Pacific. Sullivan emphasized that the island already has a 20-million-gallon fuel storage facility. Its upgrade will allow American destroyers and other ships to use Adak as a strategic staging point. Now, in the event of an invasion, American planes take off from bases up to 1,000 miles away, including Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks. The senator compared this to sending firefighters from New York to fight a fire in Chicago. He believed that developing ports and bases would significantly reduce response times. The situation is also affecting NATO's strategy. According to the politician, the alliance is increasing its focus on the northern flank, especially after the accession of Finland and Sweden. The senator added that the Donald Trump administration intends to increase the overall defense budget to approximately $1.5 trillion, which should send a signal to Russia and China. Russia and China's interest in the Arctic is a serious concern for NATO, and the allies are preparing to conduct Operation Arctic Sentry. This operation aims to strengthen air, land, and sea surveillance of the vast northern polar region, covering 21 million square kilometers. Joint patrol exercises are planned to practice cooperation. The final details on the mission's nature have not yet been announced, but U.S. Air Force General Alexis Grinkovich, Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, has indicated that it will be announced at a joint briefing in the coming days. The interest of many countries in the Arctic is understandable. Firstly, because it contains 22% of the world's hydrocarbon reserves. The second important factor is the melting of glaciers, which not only threatens the ecosystem but also shortens the waterway from Europe to China. Ukrainian tactical successes. Military expert Oleksandr Kovalenko reports that Ukrainian defense forces have successfully intensified tactical counterattacks, particularly in the southern sector and the Zaporizhzhia region. Factors of change. These successful maneuvers were enabled by the degradation of Russian communications and coordination, partially linked to the disruption of Starlink services. Furthermore, the exhaustion of the Russian 5th Combined Arms Army since the fall of 2025 has severely hampered Russia's ability to maintain offensive momentum. Frontline progress. Ukrainian forces have reclaimed key areas, including Novoalexandrivka, Verbove, and Vishneve, and have successfully pushed Russian units back to the left bank of the Haichur River. The cost of occupation. Data from the second week of February 2026 illustrates a stark disparity. Russian forces occupied a mere 33 square kilometers at the cost of 6,940 casualties, an efficiency ratio that places an immense burden on Russian mobilization resources. Strategic competition in the American Arctic. While the focus remains on the Ukrainian front, a secondary theater of strategic competition is rapidly developing in the Arctic region. Coordinated pressure. Senator Dan Sullivan has highlighted an alarming increase in joint Russian and Chinese military activity near Alaska, including frequent incursions into the U.S. Arctic Air Defense Identification Zone. Surveillance and control. These maneuvers are viewed as strategic surveillance, with reports indicating that these missions specifically monitor American submarine routes and undersea communication cables. Infrastructure and defense. In response, the United States is prioritizing infrastructure upgrades, such as securing funding for a deepwater port in Nome and revitalizing strategic staging points like Adak Island, which were historically vital during the Cold War. Allied response. NATO is shifting its strategic focus toward the northern flank, following the accession of Finland and Sweden. The upcoming Arctic Sentry operation aims to reinforce surveillance across 21 million square kilometers